Morning, Claudia. Good morning, Claudia. You should be able to share your PowerPoint.
Who do we have? Who's on the Samsung? Good morning, Member Evans and Member Corey. I also see we have someone who's identified by looks like a phone. If we could get them to announce who they are.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Claudia. I think that may be Commission Member Evans. She may be logged in from her phone and a laptop.
Okay, great. Member Evans, can you confirm, are you logged in both by phone and laptop?
She's muted.
I see that.
Let me ask
Hoping
her
she
to
can unmute
unmute.
herself.
Yeah. She might have just logged in and then stepped away.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that phone one doesn't seem to have any audio capability.
Yeah, I recognize it though from one of the previous meetings, and I believe that she had logged in using that
Okay.
Same. Yeah. Because there was issues with the phone or laptop. I forget which one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Denise, did you see that email with the folks for the presentation by the consultant, the list of names that we need to keep an eye out for?
Yes, and I have the list of names ready to go. Mhm.
1, 2, 3. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. This is Rachel Witt.
Good morning.
Is this a little louder? Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Member Roberts. Good morning, Member Anaya.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. It's Eleanor Evans.
Move screens around here. I have this monstrous picture of Eleanor Evans on my screen. Love it.
I look so different. I got a total baldy haircut. I know I'm going to pay for it when it gets colder.
Well, I think you look great either way, so we're good.
Thank you. You do too.
Let's see.
Good morning, everyone.
Howdy.
Good morning.
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 Hello, Member Perez. I went ahead and renamed you so that we can see your name
Thank
on
you.
the Zoom.
Good morning, Claudia. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, Jack. Great. Good morning, Sheriff Gore. Let's see, we have Commissioner
Good morning.
Perez, Query, Roberts, Gore, Anaya, and Chasen.
Good morning, everyone.
Good.
Ellen couldn't be here today, so she had a last-minute commitment that she had to attend to. So I will be chairing the meeting for the first part until she joins us. She may be able to join us later in the day. Claudia, should we call the meeting to order?
We don't quite yet have a quorum,
Okay.
Madam Vice Chair. We're
Okay.
getting closer, so we may want to wait another minute or
Okay.
so.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely. Let's do that.
Great.
Warsan, if I may say, I'm very excited that you're going to chair the meeting. I'm a big fan and I love the work that you do. So assalamu alaikum, and I'm glad to see you. This is Enrique.
Thanks, Enrique.
Enrique, remind me to teach you how to say the ain. Salamu alaikum.
Okay, you can teach me that, George, when you can say, corren los carros del ferrocarril.
Oh my God.
Or Peter pack of pickled peppers. She sells seashells by the seashore to shell shock soldiers. Thank you.
I'll just stick with hello.
You had me at hello.
The beauty, Gina, is in diversity.
Yeah, my mouth gets confused in English, so
Do we have quorum, Claudia?
I believe we do. Looks like Claudia's frozen. There's she back.
We are at 13, but we'll double checking the roll real quick.
Claudia Estela, member Estela de los Rios just joined.
We had Angela. There she is. I think we're close. 1, 2. There's Vince. Let me just count one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16. We're at 16. Madam Vice Chair, we are now at 16. You can call the meeting to order.
Okay, thanks, Claudia. Let's call the meeting to order and let's do roll call. Thank you.
Sure. To inform the Commission, we did receive notice from the following members that they will be absent today: Kara Desert, Gwen Sanders, and Nicole Murray Ramirez. We did also receive notice, as the Vice Chair explained, that she would be absent due to an urgency that arose last night, and she will attempt to join, if at all possible, for the second hour of the meeting. Member Kate Clark has informed us she will need to leave after the first hour, and if any additional members must leave the meeting, we do ask that you make a note of that in the chat box. With that, we'll start roll call. Angel Ortiz. Angela Elliott Santos.
Present. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Austin Jones. Bill Gore.
Present.
Daphne Watson. Daphne Watson. Eleanor Evans.
Present. Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays. Elena Perez.
Present.
Enrique Morones.
Present.
Estela de los Rios.
Good morning, present.
George Corey. I know I saw him and heard him. He's there.
He's there. It's frozen.
Is he frozen? Oh, he'll need to rejoin. We'll call him back. Gina Roberts.
Here, ma'am. And
Griselda
happy
Ramirez.
holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Here.
Thank you. Kate Chasen.
Present. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Kate Clark.
Good morning and present.
Tanya Taylor.
Good morning, present.
Maya Alfonso. Norma Chavez Peterson. Pedro Anaya.
Here.
Rashid Essa. Ryan Garcia. Samuel Choi. Is he here? Okay, we'll go back so we can get or have him respond. Shane Harris. Summer Stephan.
Present.
Taha Hassan.
Present.
Tammy Gillies.
Good morning, present.
Vince Catula.
Present.
Warsan Artan.
Present.
We saw Samuel Choi present, if he could give us an indication. There he is. Okay, great. And also George Corey, I believe you.
I just connected.
Perfect. Thank you. That concludes roll call. If we've missed anybody, please let us know if you are muted. Okay. And with that, Madam Chair, we are ready to move on to our next item.
Okay, thanks, Claudia. Do we have any public comments?
We do not have any request public comment speakers, but we did receive 2 electronic comments through our request to speak electronic form that were distributed to all commission members yesterday and were posted to the commission webpage. Those 2 speakers were Adolfo Mercado and Terry Gilbert, and those were distributed to the commission and posted to the webpage. I do make a note, Daphne Watson has joined. Ms. Watson, if you could give us a present for the roll call.
I'm present. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Claudia. Should we move on to our first item on the agenda today for discussion?
Yes, we can move to agenda item 4. I will pull up the presentation. Item number 4 is developing the mission statement for the Office of Equity and Racial Justice and the request to form an ad hoc committee. As this commission recalls, it has been tasked with developing the mission statement for the newly formed Office of Equity and Racial Justice. There was a request for proposals from consultants. The selection of the consultant has been made. It is UPD and the Othering and Belonging Institute, and this morning they will be providing a presentation on their team and what they'll be doing and providing further background. With that, I turn it over to the project team.
All right. Thank you so much. My name is Jess Chacon. I'm with UPD. And so we're just going to do, thank you so much for having us here and giving us your time. So we're just going to do a quick review of what we're going to talk about today, and then we'll jump in. So first, we're going to introduce the team and then share the scope of the work, and then talk about the ad hoc committee, our next steps, open it up for some discussion, some questions, and then we'll talk about next steps and move forward. So to start with our introduction, so we'll start with our UPD team. So I am Jess Chacon, as I mentioned. My background is mostly in education. So I was a principal in East Oakland, and then I was also an assistant superintendent. A lot of the work that I did was on our Serving Black Students initiative to really work through the disparities for achievement, attendance, and different scopes of our Black students in the Bay Area. So I'll hand it over, pass it to Anne.
Hi, I'm Anne Williamson. I am a director at UPD Consulting and the director for this project. And I've been with UPD for almost 8 years. Prior to joining UPD, I worked for the City, County, and State of Washington, D.C., and then I also worked for the City and County of San Francisco. And I will turn it to Priya.
Thanks, Anne. Hi, everyone. My name is Priya Shankar, and I'm a consultant with UPD. My background is also in education policy and research, particularly with a focus on equity. And prior to joining UPD, I worked with the Brookings Institution. I will pass it to Doug.
Good morning, everyone, and afternoon to those of us who are on the East Coast. My name is Doug Austin. I'm the CEO of UPD Consulting and the company's founder. I'm going to tell you a little bit about UPD in a second, but just for background about me, I am a public sector management person. Prior to founding this company, I was the chief of staff of the Baltimore City Schools. Prior to that, I was the deputy commissioner for development in the housing department in Baltimore. And before that, I worked for the city manager in Oakland. The experiences that you've heard of the people on the UPD team here are typical of the kind of people who work at UPD. We are a public sector management consulting company, which distinguishes us from other consulting companies. We only work in the public sector. And virtually everybody who works here has spent time on your side of the table, working in standing up the most difficult initiatives in the public sector, and trying to accomplish and push your organizations on goals and objectives while you're doing your day job as well. We are a relatively small firm, but we don't act like one. We are based in Baltimore, but we have a national focus. We've worked in places like Newark and Houston and Miami and Detroit, as far away as Honolulu. And our work takes us into organizational assessments and program design and strategic planning, but the real heart and soul of the work that we do is around implementation. We pride ourselves on helping our clients actually get things done. So we don't come in and do studies and leave you with reports and best practices and guidelines. We stick around to serve as a thought partner and to roll up our sleeves and actually help you implement the most important work that you've set out for yourselves. We are currently engaged in a project that I think has relevance to what you're trying to do. We're working with Teach for America in an organizational-wide assessment, an equity assessment for that organization, and a game plan for them to become a more anti-racist organization. And we're about to start an organization-wide assessment with the Vancouver, Washington Public Schools. So we have, while we have lots of experience on the implementation side with local government, we are relatively new into the arena of anti-racism and equity, although with some relevance and background there as well. But for that very reason, we have partnered with Othering and Belonging, which is one of the most preeminent institutions in this field. And so with that, I will turn it over to our partners, John, Wendy, and Guadalupe, to introduce themselves and ONBI.
I'll start. My name is John Powell. Thank you, Doug, and thanks to folks in San Diego. I'm the director of the Othering and Belonging Institute, and I'll tell you a little bit about the Institute and about myself, and then hand it over to Wendy and let her proceed with introducing our organization. I'm a professor at University of California, Berkeley, and the director of the Othering and Belonging Institute. The Institute is fairly large. The different sectors of the Institute, there are about 40 plus staff. In addition to that, we have about 100 professors. And we cover the waterfront. So we look at issues around race, gender, sexual orientation, disability, religion, and so on. So we actually look at the process of marginalization and the process of more favored groups across the board. And we don't just look at it to better understand it, we actually work at every level, from research to concepts to practice to evaluation. And we work not just in California, we work throughout the world. We have a growing staff in Europe, doing work in Africa, Latin America, and there's a push recently to do more work in Asia. Let me just say a little bit about the name, because I know the name is may sound odd to most of you, although it's becoming a little more familiar. But whenever I'd say to people, Othering and Belonging, they'd say, what? And I say, Othering and Belonging. So until a year or so ago, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, we were the Haas Institute for a Fair and Inclusive Society. And we changed our name to Othering and Belonging, in part because we felt the process that people were experiencing in the United States and the world was both the process of being othered, in some way being valued as less than fully human, as less than a full participant, and as less than fully deserving. And that those are all expressions of marginalization. Interestingly enough, those of you who follow literature will find that almost everyone feels that way, actually. So even what's considered the dominant or favored group feels very much like they don't belong, that this is not their country, or they don't recognize it anymore. And we look at this both at a interpersonal, but also at an institutional and governmental level. So the problem for othering, which you could say exclusion or discrimination or racism is an expression of, but also religious intolerance or attacks, also immigration policy, all those are expressions of othering. And we wanted to actually look at the deep structure of othering and then try to figure out what to do. And we oftentimes say that the solution for othering is not saming, so you don't make everyone the same in order for them to be a part of something. It's belonging. And the heart of belonging is co-creation, that you come into something that you get to participate with an effective voice, and recognition. And so you recognize for who you are in your individual and group capacity. So we felt that the way people were practicing both equity and inclusion didn't really actually embrace both of those. Equity was practiced, and still is practiced mainly in the United States, almost exclusively in the area of disparities between a favored and less favored group. And that actually creates a mechanism where people are fighting over what's perceived as scarce resources, which creates what we call breaking, polarization. And we felt that was a problem. I won't say much more, but I will say, when we moved to start focusing on belonging and the practice of belonging through targeted universalism and bridging, it created a little bit of a ruffle in the D&I community, because I was one of the 3 people that sort of brought equity into the public discourse in the early 90s. And so when I decided to move to this other area, people were concerned that we're finally getting traction, it's finally mainstream, and now you're leaving. And so through and these are friends and colleagues, so we started describing the work we do through targeted universalism and bridging as equity 2.0, to make it clear that this is a journey we're on, we continue to learn. And we've done the work and aspects of the work, like I said, all around the world, and continue to learn and continue to grow. And Wendy is one of our chief people that work with folks on the issue in terms of implementation. I mean, 2 more comments, then I'll stop. One, we also started a group called GARE, and I believe San Diego is part of that, which is Government Alliance for Racial Equity. And it's one of the largest groups now in the country. We have over 300 governments that are part of that. That's been extremely useful. It creates peer-to-peer learning, but also a backstop where we provide research and policy analysis, and then help governments across the country figure out what that means operationally. Again, I started fairly recently at the national level, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Out of that, we're now seeing more and more governments actually move toward targeted universalism and belonging. And then the last thing I'll say is that, like Doug and UPI, we work in the public sector, but we also work in the private sector. So some of our clients are people like a group like Salesforce or Google. We work with Apple. Sometimes in work with police departments all over the country. So in our effort to bridge, we believe that not only do we have to bridge between people, between groups, we have to bridge between sectors. So we're very deliberately into that work. I'll stop there and turn it over to Wendy.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, John, and thank you, commissioners, for giving us time this morning and giving us the opportunity to work with you on the really great project that you're moving forward on. And of course, that speaks to a very long process that you all have been working on before, of course, on equity issues. My background at the Institute, I do work explicitly on public finance and economic systems at local levels, and public government and advocacy groups and policy groups in that respect. And the other part of my work, as John mentioned, related to that, of course, is to work with groups that are interested in furthering racial equity and targeted universalism. And as John mentioned, the audiences for that work are quite diverse, including private sector and foundations, but a lot of work with local government and other public agencies that have a very deep engagement with the communities that they. And I wanted to also, Guadalupe Velasquez, who's another person with OBI who helps us on this work as well, was able to join us this morning, partially because she's doing an equity training for Franklin County, Ohio work and local government. And so she apologizes for not being able to make it today. And she has 20 years background in working in local government, especially around racial equity, and work with immigrant populations and refugee groups in the Columbus, Ohio, and also has worked a lot on sharing and supporting similar roles with Claudia with the Human Rights Commission, or I'm sorry, the Human Relations Commission in Columbus, where she worked as well. So she said to say good morning and forward her welcomes and appreciation. Could we have the next slide? So I wanted to first just review the process of the work to partially discuss also the point of the work. And for us at the Institute, when we're talking about applying target universalism on working in a belonging orientation, the process of doing work is often much more important than having a final product at the end, although that final product at the end is really the details of how to implement that. So if we're thinking about, and some of our earlier conversations with your colleagues in the city, we had a lot of discussions on what the aspirations were around the work of this office in the future. And a lot of that language had to do with building trust with the community, having that institution be very vested in a community perspective, to have a really specific workplace culture that's instilled from the very start. And then also this implementation piece around being able to practically realize those aspirations that are often discussed as being embedded with the mission statement. In practice, we see that a lot of what happens within the building trust and workplace culture and implementation is something that's encoded in processes that are much broader than simply what the stated mission statement is. And again, that speaks to why belonging and targeted universalism, or equity 2.0, has a lot to do with process. So co-creation is a key part of that. So having people share vested interest and vested power in shaping what they'll be showing up to when they work with the office in the future. Another aspect of this is to have a really expansive consideration around differences that exist. And of course, with your, one of the things that makes San Diego a little bit unique from other places is that you are a border metro area. And so that introduces a new set of differences to consider around a lot of other differences that exist within the city, and being able to grasp and deal with all of those within the idea of building trust and investment and co-creation and what the office will look like is embedded within the final product that we're working for at this phase, which is a mission statement. So I'll step through some of the mechanics of the process that we'll do. The first that you all requested, that we were really excited to see you have as part of the process, was to do a best practices scan of other local governments within the US. And also part of that would be looking at best practices in an even more expansive geography across the globe. And so as John mentioned, we have a lot of connections in other countries, and so we're gonna be bringing that as well. The second portion is to have a really broad community online survey as that first part. And we'll work with you all to define which different groups that's going to be. Along the different strategies that we're using, that will be the effort to bring in the broadest amount of people within this process. We're going to use that as the basis for the first meeting, which is the baseline meeting. We're imagining that to be an audience that's more narrowed than the people that we're reaching out to through those surveys. And again, we'll work with you all and with the subcommittee to define exactly who the audience is that we want there. The material from the baseline meeting then becomes what we've called the horizon meeting. That's where we start taking all of that material that's come from the survey, the best practices review, the baseline meeting, feedback on all of those ingredients, and start translating those into the specific language that we want of the mission statement. And again, that'll be the concrete material that we've taken from all of this product that will really create a sense of co-creation and power and influence that people feel in this office and the creation of the office at this kind of first foundational level. After that meeting, of course, we start drafting the actual mission statement. And then again, to try to do the practice of co-creation, we're bringing it back to yourselves, to the second really broad community survey around this, additional focus groups, and meetings with what we're proposing to be an ad hoc community that we hope you create today. After that, again, it's a revised mission statement that's again informed by this really broad broad audience of people. And then throughout those last 3 phases, there'll be ongoing work to do action planning. And that's really a strength that will lay the framework for not just the mission statement, but again, like these practices that are really important and the processes that are very important, and building those aspirations for trust, for building agreement. Sometimes it's, you know, equity policies fail because there's not agreement in the first place that it's a problem that needs to be addressed. With the amount of resources that you all have been able to invest in the creation of that office. So again, one of the important parts around that is to think about how to take that on as well. And again, that's one of the efforts of focusing on co-creation. Could we have the next slide? So we had a lot of discussion around what we imagine the role of this ad hoc committee that hopefully you create today again, and then yourselves as a full body. So the general goals around both of those things is to really concretize y'all's investment that you've had in creating this office. And I'm sure, and starting to read about was this very long genesis of working on equity plans in the city and then the county. We also want to, again, through the practices around how we're creating this, make sure that you all who have a very extensive network and the different dimensions of marginality, of challenges and structures that marginalize people in the history of the county and in the lived experience of people in the county, to really make sure we attach these efforts with a really, again, like a diverse perspective of what othering has looked like in the county. And we think that you all are really critical in creating and making sure we are tied to those networks. And those networks also work to, again, create a sense of not just taking the mission statement and getting feedback on it, but actually creating the mission statement itself. So again, the idea that people are showing up to the office and expecting certain things from the office that they help define. And that's really a difference between what we're talking about with Equity 2.0, which is one of the ways we can really practically instill a sense of power sharing with communities in a meaningful way. So we think that you all are key to that, and the ad hoc committee will also be a channel for some of that input. Could we have the next slide? So some of the concrete activities for yourselves and this committee that we hope you'll form today, that we're advocating for. The commission itself, this full body, will give us substantive feedback and input at these HRC meetings. We'll be attending those, of course, and planning in advance for how you can plug into the different phases that we're in throughout the project. The committee, again, will be help us be a way to have a more day-to-day, phase-to-phase interaction with you all by channeling a lot of your expertise and connections. The committee itself will have ongoing meetings in addition to the HRC meetings with us, the consulting team. And again, one of the really important practices would be to make sure we're co-creating with all of the different communities that you represent through your work and expertise area. Could we have the next slide? And I think Jess is going to review some of our next steps as a team.
All right, thank you, Wendy. So just as Wendy mentioned a couple times, so today you will form the ad hoc committee. The other steps are just that work that Wendy was talking about. So for us to identify best practices in US and international cities, review and synthesize San Diego County racial equity initiatives that are already executed, review and synthesize San Diego racial equity initiatives and outside of local government, prepare and conduct broad community survey, and then also we'll meet with the ad hoc committee for the mission creation. So now we can go to the next slide, please. So now we're going to leave it open. We're about 15 minutes to hear from you. And so we can do two things. So you can drop in the chat your questions, and then I will keep track of it. I think most of the questions will be answered by Wendy. But folks can jump in. And then, so a couple things. What's important for us to know as we start this project with you all? And then what questions do you have for us? And so feel free, if you want to unmute your mic and just ask the question, you can do that.
Jess, just for, because it's a Brown Act meeting and for clarity of the record, if members could raise their hand or somehow indicate they'd like to speak so that we have a clear recording of the record and ask their questions that way. The chat function is only for administrative functions because of the meeting. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We do have Samuel Choi raised, member Choi raised his hand.
All right, so I see Samuel and then I see Enrique. So let's hear from Samuel.
We're having trouble hearing member Choi. We have member Enrique Morones and also member Taylor in the queue.
All right. So,
yes, thank you. I'm very impressed with your presentation. To make demands, political culture institutions, create sense of community, building trust. I want to mention something about building trust and how to respond. I am a human rights activist, and just this past Saturday, we were physically attacked as we were doing a silent vigil. We were attacked physically, verbally, and threatening by Trump people that had their flags, no masks, 2 feet from our faces. The sheriffs were standing 15 feet from us and did nothing, did absolutely nothing. Sheriff Gore's on this call. He's the boss of all the sheriffs. He did respond to my email about, filing a complaint and filing a battery and assault, which was not possible because the officer only gave me a complaint form. So when you have this type of a situation and you have people on this commission, which are part of the big problem, law enforcement, the district attorney, which for many of us don't have the best reputation with it, this past year, we've all seen all these issues, even though Sheriff Gore, I consider him a really, a friend and a good person. How would you deal with this issue? We had at the very beginning 2 people that had written statements. They weren't able to make the call. One of them was Alfredo Mercado. He was with us. He's a friar, a religious person. The other one was Tari Gilbert. She's a nurse practitioner. The people that were in the vigil were a medical doctor, 2 nurse practitioners, 2 friars, a 70-year-old woman, and myself. There was 100 Trump people with flags that hit the friars. They slapped the phone out of my hands, and yet the sheriffs did nothing. How do you build trust? And how do you respond to such an outrageous situation, which I'm not the only one that's faced this many times. I know there's other people on the commission that have faced these types of assaults. It's really hard. It's really hard. So what do you recommend in a situation like that? And should they be members of this commission? Because I've been asked that quite a bit. I'm referring to law enforcement and the district attorney. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll turn that to John. I know, John, you've been working in a lot of these circumstances as of late and also for a very long time.
So, Enrique, first of all, I'm sorry that happened. I mean, I can imagine that was pretty traumatic, just trying to be a good citizen, and even more traumatic that you had law enforcement folks close by who wouldn't do anything. So trust is actually very important and has to be built. It has to be earned. And I just had a conversation yesterday with a major organization, and they wanted to jump right in to, and that's frankly, some of it was around policing, to create committees on building trust. And I said, you haven't done it yet. It's not something you can announce on a piece of paper and say, we're going to create this committee and work together if you have a history of things like that. And so I would say, and it's not just talking about it. You have to actually demonstrate that something is changing. And so the exact mechanisms can be worked out, but clearly if the sheriff is on the call today or come together, and I mean, that's where I would start. And
I am on the call today, and I'd like to interject if I could. Enrique and I exchanged emails on Saturday, I believe. You filed a complaint with the Sheriff's Department, I believe, yesterday. We're in the process of interviewing taking statements from the deputies and reviewing the body-worn camera. And I just don't think that the Human Relations Commission virtual meeting here is the place to handle a complaint against 2 deputies in the sheriff's department. We're looking into it. We're not sweeping it under the carpet. Enrique, I've dealt with you for 20 years, back to my FBI days, and I'm really disappointed you've taken this avenue to lodge your complaint and tell one side of the story of what happened out there. Let us do an investigation. We'll get back to you and we'll hopefully build that trust that you're talking about. I thought we had some of that, Enrique. I've never been hesitant to talk to you or take any of your issues up in the past, and I'll do it again this time. I just think this is the forum to address the issue, to be honest.
Well, I think it is. And the actions against the African-American community with the Black Lives Matter by the sheriffs in Poway recently, the police against our Black brothers and sisters in San Diego has not been appropriate and not accepted. And I will speak out not only in this commission, but publicly, because people need to know the truth. And that trust is lost. When I had to talk to my medical doctor today, have to have tests because of COVID, because of the actions, when the sheriff said, we were waiting for more of an escalation. What do they need? Gunshots? It was outrageous, and I want people to know about it.
Excuse me, this is Rachel Witt with County Council. I just want to let you know that the agenda item we're talking about is the mission statement. And so to the, time is really sensitive. And so to the extent we can remain on the agenda, that is really important. Thank you for your understanding.
So Rachel, before we leave this, I know that obviously this is something that people feel very strongly about. This is probably one of the reasons, the idea of building trust in the community is one of the reasons you're doing the great work you're doing. And I think sort of to create a
forum. Can I interrupt you one minute, John? I think because what Enrique was asking, is it appropriate to have law enforcement on this commission? To me, it's completely appropriate to have law enforcement on this commission, to have this dialogue. Right. Instead of talking in an echo chamber, let's talk to each other and not yell at each other. I think it's perfectly appropriate to have the law enforcement, the district attorney, and all parties concerned in this forum. But maybe I'm a minority here on this.
Well, there's a lot I don't know, so I don't want to make judgments without having a little more information, as you suggested, Sheriff Gore. What I will say, we do believe in bridging. And like I said, not just bridging between people, but bridging between institutions. There are sometimes some conditions that have to be set in order for bridging to be real. But we do think it's important to talk to, engage with people and institutions who might otherwise be seen as on the other side. So that would suggest, and a lot of the work we're doing, I'm doing work in Minnesota right now with the community and the police department, that has to be approached respectfully with the different interests and concerns aired appropriately. And I would hope that in San Diego that you do something like that. What I was going to say is that I think it's an important issue, and how you deal with it. Rachel was saying you didn't allow time with it on this agenda. This is not an agenda item. I respect that, but I also think things will happen, and you have to make space and create a forum and a container to move those things forward. And building trust is not easy. And the only other thing I would say is that the procedure for dealing with a complaint is in place, but I think you're actually going beyond that right now. You're actually talking about building something at a deeper level in terms of belonging and trust. My guess is many of your mechanisms that you have in place support that, but they're not the end of it, that you may have to think about new ways of coming together, new ways of talking, which is different than a formal complaint. So I just want to keep the door open that you actually would be willing to explore things you haven't explored before, even as you use some of the things that are already in place.
We have members Troy, Taylor, and Gillies in line with their hands raised. Madam Vice Chair.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. And along the same lines of a question about building trust, I just want to talk about the process a little bit and ask Wendy and others about the usage of translation for various immigrant populations that live in San Diego, as well as what John was saying in regards to bridging across sectors. So we've had a Welcoming San Diego strategic planning process a couple of years ago across the region here, where we've seen some success in terms of bridging sectors. You know, we've had law enforcement, philanthropy, education, public and private sector, as well as some of the grassroots organizations and communities that speak the various languages. So I know we're counting on all of us here in the commission to do the outreach and letting folks know about this interview, the survey, and also the meetings. Are there any specific kind of strategies, especially in this virtual era, to really make sure that people show up, and in any additional accessibility regarding language that we'll be utilizing to make sure that people who are from different cultures feel like they belong? And also, just picking up on Enrique's point, that's something that's been bothering me a lot, and something that I think it's been on my heart ever since I joined the commission, is that, you know, we do have the issue of the border, and is a very, very visible manifestation of othering. And it's something that it's going to be in discussion for forever here in this region. And I want to kind of raise that as something that we should tackle head on when it comes to issues of the border and all the disagreements and all the conflict that has arisen through the years here of the debate about the border, and specifically also not just the physical border, but the militarization and the use of local police and local law enforcement to enact othering immigration and enforcement policies, which I know it's a current debate right now in the county. So I just wanted to be able to create space for that.
So let me just jump in for a second. You're starting on a very, I think, important and a serious process. And obviously can't answer, if you knew the answer to all those questions, you wouldn't need us or UPD. So I think all those things go into the mix. I want to just respond to a couple of them. There's something interesting about bridging, and the initial, that has come into the public discourse through many ways. A lot of people associated with Putnam's work. We've actually added our own twist to it. We just had an election in the country, and the work that we've did showed up very prominent in the election. I'll explain that to you in a minute, why that's important. So a number of the canvassing groups have gone through a number of iterations. There used to be canvassing, which is, as you know, you go to someone's door, call them on the phone, you talk to them for 3 minutes, try to get them to vote for your candidate or issue. Then there's relational canvassing, which is actually where you actually try to establish some kind of relationship with the person. And then most recently in this last election, there was something called deep canvassing. And deep canvassing really builds on bridging. And bridging, and here's the interesting thing about deep canvassing, and I think you'll see what I'm saying, Ms. Samuel, that it builds on bridging, and bridging is based on empathetic and compassionate listening and practices. And I could give you an example of deep. So deep canvassing, instead of taking 3 to 5 minutes, can take half an hour to an hour. And it really starts off with, how are you today, Samuel? And how's your family? Are you safe? Do you need anything? What anxieties and concerns do you have? What's happening in your community? What do you hope to happen? And it's really is about listening to the person. And it turns out, when this is the contradiction, it's not about persuading the person. It's actually being present with the person to get to know what their concerns are, how they suffer, what their fears are, what their aspirations are. Here's the wrinkle though. A recent survey out of Yale showed that deep canvassing was over 100 times more effective at persuading people. That's not the goal though. Or actually, I mean, so when you say in terms of people coming together, in many instances, in building initial trust and bridges, you don't start with the most difficult issue. You don't put it off. It's not like you put it off for 6 months or even 3 months. But if you walk in the room with a list of issues, and frankly, even that need to be addressed, that's actually not necessarily how you build a bridge or how you build trust. I walk in the room and first of all, I have to say hello. First of all, I have to find out how you're doing. First of all, how's your day? What are you dealing with? And after you get those things, and that starts to build the bridge, then you pivot to those really hard issues. So I think that in a sense, the sequencing is a little bit, may need to be addressed. And sometimes people are not ready to deal with the most difficult issue, because what brings them to the most difficult issue is hurt, but also a desire to fight and hit back. That's not a space to bridge or build trust. So anyway, so we have to deal with all that. And again, like Enrique, and I think you, Samuel, I'm not saying sweep anything under the rug or the sheriff, but how you get it on, how you get people into the room, how you build really matters. On the question of language, two things. I think I would hope this process would be very sensitive to that, but I think it would go much further than that, because not understanding people doesn't mean you don't speak the same language formally. In the United States, for the most part, Black Americans and white Americans both speak the same language, sort of, but not really. And so it's not a simple language translation. It's actually something deeper than that. It's a cultural translation. It's becoming aware of the other person's perspective, not just from the head, but also from the heart. That's what we don't have. We don't have the ability to actually see each other. We see caricatures of each other. We see stereotypes of each other. And so I think the formal language thing has to be addressed, but I think we have to go beyond that and sort of talk about what's going on. And the final thing I would say is that, and the we needs to be the very communities you're reaching out to. So I would hope that in this process, as you move forward, it's not that a group of experts, including us, design something and then give it to the community, but we bring the community in as early as possible. And that's part of the co-creation process.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Member Taylor.
Morning. Thank you so much for your detailed presentation, as well as I was very excited to read your proposal as well. I believe in empathy. I believe in not only building relationships, but sustaining relationships. I also believe in being mindful of what's going on in the moment. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, so I realize sometimes as a commissioner here, I might look at things a little bit differently because I try to walk in another person's shoes and see things. But I also believe in not preaching to the choir all the time. I am a Christian woman, but I also know that there are a lot of people who are spiritual. And one of the things I noticed during your presentation, I heard the word procreate or procreation multiple times, maybe 15 to 20 times. And I wasn't sure, because there's so many people who are engaged in the change in equity, inclusion, diversity, if that word procreate or procreation can be seen in a negative light, because there's so many people that align that word procreation with giving birth or life in a biological sense versus shaping the structure of an organization or a department. So I'm just not sure if that has ever been a concern or interest.
So Kenya, very quickly, I don't know if other people used it, but what I used was co-create, not procreate, co-create, that we create together. Instead of my doing something, we do something. And instead of my making the rules, we make the rules. So we create.
I thought I heard someone say procreate. Is that not?
No, not procreate, co-create.
Maybe it's my connection. Thank you so much for that clarification.
I think it's just my bad diction, so sorry. But no.
I heard the same thing, Mrs. Commissioner Evans.
Okay.
So I'm sorry if I missed, if I didn't speak.
This is great, because part of communication is having an open dialogue to figure
out what
the issue is, and instead of assuming, we resolved it and moved forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We had Member Gillies' hand up, but it's now down. We can't tell. Member Gillies, if you had wanted to speak.
Thank you, Claudia. I just want to take a moment to thank John for what he was saying, and regarding Enrique and the sheriff, two people who I admire very much. And having been doing this for 14 years at the ADL in San Diego, I just want to say that I think as the HRC, we are here to set the tone and to lead by example for the community. And while we all come to this from various backgrounds and maybe we don't agree on everything, the willingness to sit and do the hard work together is very important and something that we should all keep in mind and come into the room feeling that the other person and people are coming in with good intention. And I think that will help us to make a lot of progress together, is that our intention is to make this community a better place. So thank you all.
Thank you, Member Gillies. Our next speaker is Vice Chair Arton.
Thanks, Claudia. First, as the chair for today, the meeting chair, I would like to remind everyone that we should stick with the agenda that we're on, please. If we want to discuss issues that were brought up through the public comments, we can put those on a future item if you all want to discuss that further. So I just want to put that reminder up front first. And then second, I have a few questions. My first question is similar to the question that Samuel had around community engagement. I want to go a little bit further and say, how will the office, how do you all plan, maybe I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but like how will the office address issues of intersectionality, such as environmental justice, immigration, and economic justice, and so on? That's my first question. And since we're calling it the office of, oh my God, there's another office in the city of San Diego that exists. Since we have the word race and equity in there, how are we defining equity in this case? Like, how do we define equity in this case? So those are my two questions. How do we define equity or inequities in this scenario? And how will the office address issues of intersectionality, such as environmental justice, economic justice, and immigration?
So I feel like the way we define equity is going to come largely from working with the communities within the county, and specifically many different identities and different ways that people have been othered, and expanding that idea of difference. And so I feel like that's the source in which we'll be defining equity, both through the process that we're doing and who we invite to the table, who's going to be making and shaping the decisions of the future of this committee, and trying to model what that might look like for the office going forward. And your second question, and I think that speaks to the idea of intersectionality, is in addition to defining equity through practice. And this what we're intending this to be is a really solid model for what the office would look like going forward. We're not involved with that part at this time, but hopefully this process will model the ideas and practices of the office going forward once it gets legs and is in place.
And let me just add a couple of things. So it's a great question. It's, you know, like a lot of these questions, though, it's not a question that really is, it deserves more than a 90-second response. And so, not to be glib, but in my latest book on Race into Justice, I do have a chapter in there on the multiple identities and intersectionality. So there's a whole chapter where I talk about that. And I'm teaching a class on that next semester at Berkeley. And one of the things that we know from the research is that we all have multiple identities. We all have intersectional identities. Kim Crenshaw, who sort of coined the phrase intersectionality, is a good friend of mine. But we also know two things, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds. A lot of our identities actually embedded in structures. And also our salient identity oftentimes is a function of what's threatened. So if we're threatened because you wear a scarf or habib, then that's going to become the most important part of your identity. If you're threatened because of people can't understand when you say co-create, people think you're saying procreate. It's like, okay, that's what. So this is work by Amartya Sen, who's an Indian Nobel Prize winner. He basically says that as we all have multiple identities, we all have intersectional identities, both they're actually embedded in structures, but also there's attacks. And so if you attack someone because of because of their sexual orientation, that will become, of those multiple identities, that will become the salient identity. That's what they will organize around, and that's what they will focus on. And if you reduce the threat, then identities become more fluid. Now, I don't know how much you'll get into all that work, but there's a lot of good work, great work actually out there. And if there's time and capacity, I would suggest looking at it. And part of the thing of being healthy is the ability to move between identities, so that I'm not always, sometimes my salient identity is being an older Black man. Sometimes it's being a father. Sometimes it's being, a professor. Sometimes it's being a vegetarian. Sometimes it's, liking jazz. But what happens in society is that when you're other people, you flatten them. You don't see their multiple identities. You don't see they become one thing. They become Black, or they become a woman, or they become a Muslim, or and all of us have multiple identities, and all of our identities are constantly intersecting. And so part of a system that's not working is where we don't allow people to actually experience and live out their multiple identities. So anyway, I'm sorry to go on so long, but I think.
Yeah, thank you. I brought that up because I feel like in the community engagement process, some of these issues are also important. For example, ensuring that we engage communities of color that also don't speak English. And again, I think this is how it relates to what Sammy was saying earlier. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. We do not have additional speakers at this time. And I would like to announce two things before we get into the next steps. Is Member Rashid Essa did join at the top, closer to 10, just joined a little bit late. I just wanted that clear on the record. And Ms. Clark has left the meeting. But there are the action items related to this was soliciting information, asking questions of the consultants related to the development of the mission statement. And the other item is the formation of an ad hoc committee to assist in developing this mission statement and providing feedback and input in between HRC meetings. So the commission is at the point where they can make that motion, and pursuant to the bylaws, our committees, our subcommittees consist of between 3 and 7 members. And Commission Member Roberts just raised her hand.
I'd like to make that motion, or Commissioner Roberts would like to make the motion to accept this proposal and also volunteer for the ad hoc committee.
Commissioner Evans, I would like to second the motion and also volunteer for the ad hoc committee.
For clarity, the work proposal was part of the statement of work as the response to the request for proposal. The action item would be the formation of the subcommittee and having people volunteer for that. So would the maker of the motion and the second accept the revision to
duly revised,
accept the report and form the committee? Thank you.
Yes.
And
Evans.
Someone asked me in the chat how big the subcommittee would be, and I don't know if they mean the and I didn't respond because I don't know the answer to that, but I want to put it out for Doug and Wendy and others and the commission himself. If a decision has been made, or if some process for deciding the size of the subcommittee or ad hoc committee needs to be addressed.
The bylaws provide that subcommittees can be between 3 and 7 members, and what the size of the subcommittee is usually determined on the number of members who are able to participate and commit to meetings on over a short period of time. And we do now have Member Roberts, Member De Los Rios, and Member Corey with their hands up. And we do have the motion to form the subcommittee in a second.
My hand was already resolved.
Thank you. Member De Los Rios? Member De Los Rios, we cannot hear you if you're trying to speak. Member Corey, while we.
Yes, please. I would like to add my name to that committee.
So for those who have expressed interest thus far in the committee, Member Roberts, Member Evans, Member Corey, Chair Nash had indicated that she would also is interested in serving on the committee. Are there any others who'd like to express that interest?
This is Commissioner Watson. I'd like to join.
Thank you, Member Watson.
This is Commissioner. I would like to join.
Is that Commissioner Ramirez? I'm sorry.
Ramirez. Sorry.
Yes, thank you. We have 6 individuals interested. The meetings will start.
Oh, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what happened, but I put it in the chat. This is Commissioner Stella de los Rios.
Yes.
I would like to be on that committee as well, please.
Claudia also, Griselda. I don't know if she already said it. That's
yes.
Also in the chat. Okay.
So we have the following individuals who have expressed interest: Member Roberts, Member Evans, Corey, Nash, Watson, Ramirez, and De Los Rios. And that's 7 total.
This is Commissioner Samuel Choi. I am interested as well, but I understand if it's more than 7, then I don't need to join.
If the commission would like to exceed the bylaw recommended amounts, we could do so by way of motion to expand the size.
This is Commissioner Watson. I'd like to make a motion to expand the size.
This is Commissioner Khoury. I'd like to second that motion.
Okay. We could amend the original motion to form the subcommittee to be a subcommittee of 8, so that you don't need to take 2 separate votes. You could do everything in one motion.
I would be willing to amend my motion to that.
I'll second that, Commissioner Evans.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further discussion, we're ready to take the vote, Vice Chair.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Member Elliot Santos?
Aye.
Member Gore?
Aye.
Member Watson?
Aye.
Member Evans?
Aye.
Member Perez?
Aye.
Member Morones?
Aye.
Member De Los Rios?
Aye.
Member Corey?
Aye.
Member Roberts?
Aye, ma'am.
Member Ramirez?
Aye.
Member Chasen?
Aye.
Member, oh, Clark left. Member Taylor?
Aye.
Member Anaya?
Aye.
Member Essa?
Aye.
Member Choi?
Aye.
Member Stefan?
Yes, aye.
Member Hassan?
Aye.
Member Gillies? Okay. Member Gillies is having some voicing issues, and she responded in the chat yes, so that will be recorded. Member Katula?
Aye.
Member Vice Chair Arton?
Aye.
Motion carries with a unanimous vote. So the next steps will be the subcommittee will be contacted, and we will schedule and work with a consultant to set up those meetings, and we'll be reporting back periodically to the commission.
I have to leave the meeting. I'm sorry, but I have a 11 o'clock I'm a little late for. But I appreciate spending part of the morning with you and venturing on this work and working with our partners, partner consultants. So I'm going to sign off.
We look forward to seeing you again, Mr. Powell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day, sir.
Thank you. You too.
Madam Vice Chair, that concludes this agenda item. Unless there is any outstanding pieces, we do have the motion to form the subcommittee of 8, and we're ready to move forward to the next agenda item when you're ready.
Okay, unless there are anything else on this agenda, let's move on to agenda item 5.
Thank you, commissioners. It was great to be here today and looking forward to working with the new committee.
Thank you, OBI and UPD team. We look forward to working with you all too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Our next item is a presentation on increasing access to county contracting. We have with us today the Director of the Department of Purchasing and Contracting to make their presentation. As this commission, we have multiple members, many members who are involved in many community-based organizations, nonprofit organizations, and other community-based matters, and are very astute as to the various issues throughout the county's region through their involvement in the community. I now turn this over to Jack Pellegrino, the director, for his presentation on increasing access to county contracting.
Great, thank you very much. Madam Vice Chair and members of the Commission, it's a pleasure to be with you today. My name is Jack Pellegrino. I am the director here at the County of San Diego. A little bit before, a little bit about my background. I've been doing government contracting for 39 years, almost to the day, but really have enjoyed the profession. I started my career up in the LA area, worked for aerospace companies, TRW, used aircraft, and then 19 years of my career, I worked for a wonderful company down here in San Diego called Science Applications International. Also, let's see, have served for 4 years as a director with the agency Health and Human Services. So I was the first ACS director there. And now I've been in the current role here as the Director of Purchasing and Contracting for just under 8 years. So pleasure to be with you. Claudia, I assume the time I have, want to be very respectful of the Commissioner's time. So I really want to, what are you looking for as far as the time?
You're good on time. It's 11:11. Our meeting is until noon, so I think we had allotted about 20 minutes or so for this item.
Good. I will stick to that. I will get through the presentation. Won't read you the charts. I really want to get to the discussion part and listen to any feedback that you all would share with me. So a little bit about what I'm going to talk about is our department, how our principles, vision, mission, and values, how we operate. I have some spend information to share with you, and specifically broken down with small business and community-based businesses. And then I will be moving into some specific actions that I have initiated here to increase our participation, especially for minority and women-owned and nonprofit community-based organizations. And lastly, I will talk about a couple contracts that I'm very proud of that we're starting to do that in a different way in the community. So if I may move on to the second chart there. Thank you, Claudia.
Just let me know when you need me to
I'll just say
press forward. Yeah,
next.
thanks.
And let's say a little bit about our all this information, by the way, is on our public-facing county's website. You can see if you go to our homepage there, if you go over to business and then go under procurement, you'll find that in very short order. Likewise, all our current opportunities that we solicit for are one click away into that, so you can always see what our active solicitations are. Let's see. Here's our principles, vision, mission, values. You know, really, I want to highlight what I have migrated our department to be what I call mission focused, and the reason I'm here is to serve the departments that are executing our mission for the services in our communities, for our communities, by our communities, under the leadership and the approval of our Board of Supervisors. And I'm here to be a good steward of our process assure that our process is always done with the highest ethical standards, integrity, and ultimately being in full compliance with all applicable laws and regulations. And that is always done with transparency, inclusion, and accountability. We have within 5 days when I issue any contract or purchase order by the county, that purchase order is published on my website. So you can get a PDF copy of it if you go to under my website, you can go out, you can get a copy of that within 5 business days. I'm very proud that we've been doing that since very shortly after I got here, 2014. So if there was a contract before 2014, I have a copy of it, but it's in storage right now. But everything since 2014 is available there. So the database is rather large. Next slide, please. Very simply, what as I mentioned, we support 42 departments, every one of our departments. We are a centralized purchasing organization, and my role, what I tell my staff here, is our job is to support our departments and help them acquire what the goods and services are that they need, the right quality goods and services at the right time when they need it, and at the right price, which is fair and reasonable. Not always the lowest price, but there's other considerations sometimes that we factor in when we do an RFP, and those requirements are always established in our solicitation. Not the least of which is assure that we're following appropriate protocols. But at the end of the day, we're looking to support the mission and serve the community. Next chart, please. A little bit about our annual spend. Sometimes it shocks people. I know sometimes it keeps me up at night when I think about it. So of our, you're all aware of the county budget, which is about 6.6. Last fiscal year was 6.2, I believe 6.5 billion this year. Last fiscal year, we spent 1.52 billion of that. So it's just a little bit over 20-some%. So, you know, that is a significant leverage on the success of our organization and how we serve the community. So it's very important that some of the initiatives that I've started to really focus on, because it is such a large part of how we do business here. Our contract portfolio is, we just are under a little bit under 3,000 contracts, and the value of those contracts, and you're probably going to say, gee, that's a huge value of almost 10 billion in value. The way we issue contracts are usually it's a 5-year term, and it's a base year plus up to 4 option years. And the reason we do that is because, as you know, the budget is established annually by our Board of Supervisors, so we have a legal obligation, which is why we do option years, unless we have multi-year funding, which may come from the feds or the state. But most of our board-funded items are annually, year over year, which is why we establish option years. Let's see, as part of that spend, we also do a large amount of what's called P-card transactions, and those are transactions that are under $2,500. And as you can see, we do over 100,000 transactions a year. With those purchase cards are authorized users within the department. So of the 660 cards that we have out there, they're in the 42 departments. And my department is responsible for the monthly audit and ensuring that the proper purchasing protocols are followed. Anything under $1,000 transaction requires multiple quotes. So 2 or more quotes for anything over $1,000. Next slide. So the breakdown of that $1.5 billion is the majority of that spend is in what's called health and civic services. So the largest part of that 790 million or so is health and human services, which is probably 650 to just under 700 million. The other civic services includes things like the library and registrar of voters, things that are affiliated with our operation as a county. The other large number you'll see there is the information and technology slice of that pie, which is about 340 million of that. And that is predominantly the county's information technology system, which is everything that the whole infrastructure. And as you may be aware, that is under a contract with an organization called Perspecta. That contract was competitively awarded and used to be HP Enterprise Solutions. So that's the lion's share of that. The other things that are very important to us but are smaller slices are construction. The construction numbers that you see there are both a combination of public works, which includes all the unincorporated areas, the roads, the road improvements, maintaining those projects, as well as our Department of General Services, which is responsible for the buildings that we provide services to the public in. A little bit about what we've been able to achieve. I'm pleased with some of these numbers, but there's always room for improvement with our small business. As you can see, what we've accomplished there. Our nonprofits, our community-based organizations is the largest share of that number. So all in all, about 345 million of the 1.5 billion is in those segments that you see there. And again, I think this is an area that I'm going to continue to have an initiative to increase participation in these areas. Next slide, please. So specifically, I've mentioned a couple times some initiatives that I've started about 3 months ago now. Briefed my boss, Ebony Sheldon, who is our new general manager for FG3, group manager. Specifically, I'm very pleased to announce that we have formed an agreement with the Small Business Development Center and are providing for a no-cost contracting support, both for training for small businesses, for minority-owned businesses, for community-based organizations. There's going to be monthly trainings. Obviously, right now we're going to be virtual. Those will start in December. And then it also provides for the opportunity of one-on-one consulting support to help organizations respond to county-specific opportunities. We obviously try to make our solicitations as clear and as streamlined as possible, but like all government procurements, there is an amount of paperwork. You need to understand how to fill out the forms. There's always questions, and although we always say in our bidders conferences, we're here to answer questions, sometimes there's a reluctance to come and ask us a question. That's something that I really want to change. And so that's one of the reasons it was very important to have this relationship with Small Business Development Center. Also, equally important is they have access to funding opportunities, loans, other things that can help emerging businesses that I can't necessarily do here as part of this office. So we will more formally announce this as part of the Live Well Advance. As you know, Health and Human Services is planning that for the first week in December. I will have a session. I'll be part on a panel, and a session is part of that advance, and this will be a major part with more detail of that, as well as the schedule for upcoming classes. Again, if you would share this, we will have monthly sessions that'll start in December. Second objective is to work with departments to try to establish smaller work packages to allow for minority firms and smaller firms to effectively compete. And also, as part of that, is to tailor those requirements, to thoughtfully tailor those requirements as far as what is essential and necessary for the size and nature of what we're doing. So we're going to be taking a deeper look at that. So we're not going to put the same contract type on every type of procurement. And then lastly, and not least, is we've started to work with San Diego EDC, and I'm most excited about collaborating with our ethnic business chambers, specifically the Central San Diego Black Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Asian Business Association, to do two things. One, get a better understanding of what the demographics are of businesses in our region, both types of businesses and where they're located. And then as a result of being able to finally have a better picture, a more complete picture of that information, make sure that when I am doing, my office is doing outreach for all our solicitations or any specific solicitation, that I'm appropriately reaching the organizations that are in those communities that may be underserved or underparticipate or underparticipating at this point. So I'm very excited about that work. I've had some initial discussions on it, and again, we'll be pulling together, and I'll be working with those organizations to make sure that I understand where it's appropriate to do additional outreach. Last chart, please. So the last one is two contracts that I'm very pleased to brief you on today. The first one is our Southeastern Live Well Center that was just awarded a few months. It was delayed a little bit because of COVID, but I'm very pleased to say that it is now back on moving forward. You will see an announcement today. I think it will come out in the county news release about it. This is a unique contract, a unique approach to the contract that we've taken, because this is the first time that I'm aware of, first time I've done it, and first time I think in the region, that we have actually scored 20% of the scoring criteria was based upon a local business and workers' participation plan that targeted the four, I'll call it adjacent, or four locations that are adjacent to the project. And this is the other thing that's unique about this. The contractors that submitted that 20% of the score, if you will, was based upon their level of commitment to both hire local and subcontract from those communities in those four zip codes. I'm pleased to say that PCL has committed $6 million of the project. And should they not meet that, they have at risk 1.8 million of their price at risk for not meeting if they do not meet that. But believe me, I am going to be watching monthly. We will be managing that monthly to make sure that those commitments are being followed through on. I am highly confident that we are going to have some great results. Building a center that the community wants and desires, by the community. And then secondly, in the central region also, there is a program, Live Well Neighborhoods program. The awards have not been announced yet, so I can't tell you anything more than that. We are still in evaluation, but you can see what the focus is. These Live Well neighborhoods are based on the promise zones, obviously measurable outcomes, but most notably in this RFP, we have required that there was a community subcontracting plan. When I say community, CBOs and organizations from the community providing the services in the communities. That was key to this solicitation. And it required that 80% of the dollars for this program go into services for those communities. So I'm very excited about that. Sorry for the long monologue, but that's I covered a whole lot there, but I think we have time for questions then.
Yes, thank you, Director Pellegrino. We do have some time. And
so any questions? So I really, again, I want to thank you for your time. It would be a pleasure and an honor for me to come back another time and give you a report of how we're doing, initiatives that we're establishing, and also answer any other questions you might have.
thank you, Director Pellegrino. Oh, did someone have?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I feel like I bring up this all the time, and I'm gonna bring it up one more time. But sure. I'm always concerned about language barrier, especially in the economic crisis we're in right now. I can only speak for the Somali community. So, for example, in the community that I live in, there's like small Somali stores that are owned by Somali elders who may not speak the language. Obviously, like anyone else, they're being impacted by COVID. And I'm just wondering, I'm always wondering, how are we outreaching to those business owners, small business owners, who are the backbone of our community, just like any other business owner, yet who may face barriers to get contracted or get the funding that they need because they don't speak English that well, they cannot write English that well.
Right. So, Madam Vice Chair, thank you for that question. It's something that we have started to talk about, and a matter of fact, we are going to, as you know, the board has established a new board policy as far as language translations, and as part of that, I'm looking at my department, and we will have appropriately accommodations for languages. So I can't tell you I have it today, but I will tell you today, if there's a new solicitation and there's an organization that is interested in that solicitation and has a language challenge, if you let my contracting officer know, my purchasing department know, or even myself know, we will make appropriate accommodations for that to try to really make sure that they have, I'll call it, fair access to that opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Madam Chair.
This is Commissioner Evans, and I had a similar question. I noticed, or I heard you mention at least two ethnic groups. Is the Black Contractors Association, are they involved anyway with the city?
They are the Black Contractors Association. Brother Hamid is he is a key part of the Southeastern Live Well contract. Matter of fact, I have a meeting with him just after, a little bit later today, with him and the firm PCL that will be building in that community. So the short answer is most definitely, and it's a very important part of what we're going to do with this project, not just for this project, but then for future.
Okay, and the second part of that, Is it possible to get a copy of your slide? I know you said the information's online, but I also know that I'm aware of folks who don't use or for whatever reason will not go to the website. So if I do a presentation, can I possibly have at least some of your
I would be happy, Commissioner, if you would like to tell me which slides. You can have them all, and I'd be happy to share those with you.
Alrighty. Okay.
And the slide presentation was sent in a PDF format via email yesterday. So if they need to be resent, just let me know also in case you have difficulty opening the what was sent yesterday. We can resend those.
I did receive the agenda and the public comments, but I didn't see.
I can resend that to you. I can resend the PowerPoint packet to you.
All right, thank you so much.
Sorry, I should have follow up. If somebody was to contact you, how would they do that? Can we get a contact information? Because I would like also to share this information with some of the community members that I know.
Let me do this. Claudia, if you can send out my contact information to the full commission, that would be great. But very simply, it's Jack.Pellegrino. It's spelled just like the water, not related, at sdcounty.ca.gov.
This is Commissioner Watson. I have one question.
Sure.
It's good to see you, Jack, number one first. And one of the questions I have is, we've had discussions before, making sure that the smaller nonprofit that focuses on cultural and ethnic specific groups have a chance to go into the contracting process in a more meaningful way. And we've had discussions about larger organizations that really don't have their boots on the ground, be able to, they seem to get the larger contracts, and the people in the community who respect the smaller organizations that they know and work with don't. Can there be a way in which procurements have a special set aside or special focus for those small nonprofits that focus on cultural and ethnic groups that are really got their boots to the ground and uniquely serving the community?
Thank you for that question. First, so on my slide 6 that talked about, if you go back, I brought it a couple, slide 6. I don't know if you can go backwards there. You know, that's really what you're talking about. Really is that second dot point there, working with our departments to come up with smaller work packages, and the work packages that you described specifically for, you know, certain communities, diverse communities that need special, that we need to be focusing on. So that's part of it, as well as I think a subset of that will be our in every we've started to see more and more in the Health and Human Services solicitations. There is ethnic better as far as what the scoring is and the area that focus is, and also requiring subcontracting to those smaller, I'll call it grassroots organization, and actually put that in there. In the past, we have tried to not dictate to the prime how and where to subcontract. That's something I think that we could enhance to do more in a more targeted way to get some results. So those are the couple things, but I really look forward to continuing our dialogue on this, and these and other ideas I'm open to.
Thank you, Director Pellegrino. I don't believe there are any other hands raised, questions